I'm VMI. I'm vendor machine impaired. I pushed the wrong buttons and I got Swedish fish.
It's a new disability.
I wanted this.
It's just been documented today.
This is the first time on film. Would you like some shamrocks?
Yeah, I have one almond.
One almond? Hi!
An almond and a raisin. I had seen these bags.
I'll get it. I'm VMI, but there's in this one.
Does that camera have false perspective on it?
Convention, unless you were a delegate or you had press credentials. This is the O'Neill building, just to the left, federal offices, named in honor of former Speaker of the House, local guy, Chip O'Neill. We're going to get on to Causeway Street up here. This part of the city that we're traveling down on along Causeway Street was created by filling in part of the Charles River. This was called the Mill Pond. It's a little section of the Charles, and what we did in the late 1700s is we took about 60 feet off the top of Beacon Hill and dumped it into the Mill Pond to create this part of town. 3/4 of the city you see today is built on land just like this land here. It's landfill. When Boston was settled by English colonists, 1630, when the Puritans arrived here, what they found was 1.5 square miles of land. It was a little peninsula, little tiny sliver of land stuck out into the harbor. What we've done through the years is we have filled in a tremendous amount of both the Charles River and the harbor and expanded the peninsula. Today the city covers over 40 square miles. It's 3/4 of the downtown area that's manned. The Zachem Bridge, you'll see the 10 lanes coming across the bridge and then all disappearing into the tunnels that run underneath the city now. You can see the bridge off to the left.
That looks nice. It's impressive.
The north end of the city out in front of us. There's a building right on the edge of the north end in front of us. It has a blue sign on the roof that says Park. That building was the headquarters of the Brinks Armored Car Company. In January 1950, 11 men broke into the Brinks building up there, breaking into a gun shop in western Massachusetts 3 months after the Brinks job. Specs was pretty greedy. Probably had enough money to buy the gun, but I guess he liked breaking into places. So he robbed his gun shop. Goes to court, is convicted of breaking and entering, and he's serving a sentence of, I think it was like 15 years he was serving. He didn't say a word about being involved in the Brinks job. He figured he could get out of jail eventually and then enjoy all of his money from Brinks. But 2 weeks before the statute of limitations ran out on the Brinks robbery, he got nervous he wasn't going to get his share, and he told on all of his friends. They all got arrested, and that's when the Bureau recovered $50,000, which was Specs' money. Oh well. We're headed towards Charlestown now. You look up ahead of us, you can see the Bunker Hill Monument rising up over Charlestown. Battle of Bunker Hill, second battle of the American Revolution. Looking to the right, you're looking out at the inner harbor, Boston Harbor. You can see the masts of a tall ship off to our right. That's the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world. We're going to go take a look at it. We're going to take a ride down into the old Navy base here. Charlestown Navy Yard is no longer an active U.S. naval base. 1973, the Navy turned it over to the National Park Service. But the Constitution is still a commissioned U.S. naval warship. So she's got a regular Navy crew on board. During the War of 1812, sailors saw cannonballs striking the sides of the Constitution. So you think about 2 feet of oak, cannonballs couldn't get through it. A lot of times they just bounce off, which was very unusual. And you might kind of wonder, well, why didn't everybody start building their ships with 2 feet of live oak planking? Well, not everybody could get their hands on live oak. But the other thing is, most shipbuilders would say that if you built a ship with that heavily planked, it would be so slow it wouldn't be able to get out of its own way. It wouldn't be a very effective warship. But the Constitution's design was revolutionary. Below the waterline, she's got a racing hull. She was one of the fastest ships of her type. To the right here. It's pretty impressive.
When's the last time you were down here? Fall, right?
There's also a World War II destroyer berth over here that you can get on board. It's a Fletcher-class destroyer. Sailors called Fletcher-class destroyers tin cans. They're pretty narrow. The USS Cass and Young, that's berthed over here, is decommissioned. The Park Service maintains it. But, Constitution,
quack.
Regular Navy crew on board. Now, if you look out in front of us, you can see the top of the Bunker Hill Monument. Battle of Bunker Hill fought on June 17th, 1775, right where you see the monument. But I got to tell you, the monument's not on Bunker Hill. It's on Breed's Hill, because that's where the battle was. You know, when the British Army and the colonists were fighting up there, they all thought they were on Bunker Hill. They weren't. It's Breed's Hill. They named the battle after the wrong place.
Let me know if you want me to take it.
Apparently, even back then, none of those guys wanted to stop and ask for directions. It's kind of embarrassing. Taking the water route out of the city, Newman then grabs two lanterns, lights them up, and displays them from behind the window at the top of the church steeple. That was the signal that sent Paul Revere out on the midnight ride. Paul Revere is not the only guy who went on the midnight ride. He's just the only guy who had a poem written about him doing it. You know, it was almost 100 years after the American Revolution. It's 1872 when Longfellow wrote the poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. We are right now approaching the original little peninsula that was here in 1630 when the Puritans arrived. So we're going to see some of the oldest sites in town on this part of our trip. Just around the corner, we're going to see Faneuil Hall. We're going to pass by the old State House. And when you get into the the old historic parts of the city, the streets tend to get a little confusing. So we don't want to get lost here. Help me out a little bit. Can anybody read the street sign over to the left? Tell me what street we just turned onto. Congress Street. Y'all see that? Yes? Is it Congress Street?
Yeah.
Okay, good. New England Holocaust Memorial. And this is a pretty powerful thing here. Those panels of glass are etched with numbers. There are 6 million numbers carved into the glass, represent the 6 million Jewish lives lost in the Nazi concentration camps, World War II. Boston City Hall is just to our right, up above all these red bricks. Faneuil Hall is kind of hiding behind the trees off to our left. We'll see it better once we move up through the traffic a little bit here. Yeah, traffic's a bit backed up on Congress Street right now. This is a real rare.